Hello, this is Dr. Mark Goulston, and welcome to my wake-up call. Do you know the difference between a calamity and a tragedy? A calamity is something that was unavoidable, like a tsunami or an earthquake. That's what makes it a calamity. A tragedy is something that seems like it could have been avoided, like Romeo and Juliet, or having a wake-up call and not waking up. Most people have wake-up calls in their life, but not everybody wakes up. In my wake-up call, I interview people from the powerful and the famous to everyday people with amazing stories, and they talk about their wake-up calls and their wake-up calls that not only change their life, but change the way they would live their life. One of my wake-up calls, and you'll see a sign with the title of one of my books, Just Listen, behind me, was how I learned to listen into people's eyes. It happened when I was called up to do a consultation on an oncology patient at UCLA. And the oncology doctor said, "We need an order from you." I was a psychiatrist consulting there. "We need an order from you on Mr. Smith because he's pulling at his IVs, he's pulling at his respirator tube. We had to tie down his hands and arms because he's just writhing, and we need you to come up to okay that we had to put his arms and legs down, and you need to okay a tranquilizer shot so we can calm down because he's just making things worse." So I entered the room, and when I entered the room, there's Mr. Smith with eyes the size of saucers. I mean the size of saucers. And he can't speak because he has a respirator tube in his throat, and he's going, and I said, "What is it? What is it?" Because it seemed to me he was screaming at me with his eyes, but I just wasn't getting it. And then I gave him a pencil. I put it in his hand underneath one of those restraints, and I said, "Here, write it down." And he scribbled, and it didn't make any sense. And what the oncology doctors had said is, he's psychotic. He's out of his mind. Tell him about the tranquilizer, tell him about the restraints, and then tell him that we'll take them off. So he's still screaming at me with his eyes. And I said, "We had to tie down your arms and your legs because you were pulling at everything and you were writhing all over the bed. And I'm giving you a tranquilizer, which will calm you down. And then when you calm down, we'll take you off everything." So 24 hours later, I get paged by the oncology doctor, and he says, "Mr. Smith is up. He's seated. He's off the respirator. And he told us to page you." So when I walk into the room, his saucer-sized eyes are now intent, and he takes his eyes, holds on to my eyes, and he seats me in a chair with his gaze. He says, "Sit down, take a chair." And so I sat down, and without releasing my eyes, what he said to me is what I was trying to tell you and everyone else, is that a piece of the respirator tubing was caught in my throat. It had broken off. And do you understand that before I go back to something like that, do you understand that I'm going to kill myself? Do you get it? And he kept looking at me, and my eyes watered up. You can almost see the emotion in me as I'm reliving it. And I said, "That's awful. I'm so sorry. I understand." So on that day, my wake-up call was to learn to listen into people's eyes. And I teach the world how to do that with each other. And I am telling you, if you learn to listen into other people's eyes, people are screaming out to you to hear them. So I hope you'll tune into my wake-up call and hear the amazing wake-up calls from our guests. Until then, take care and wake up.